Hey, everybody, it's me, Jamey Hammond with Fifth on the Daily. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Happy Thursday. It's going to be a good one. I want to jump right into what we're going to talk about. But first, shout out to my girl, Katie M., my friend Katie M. Give her a follow on Twitter, folks. She's a good girl. KM Mickle. It's like nickel, but with an M. Give her a follow on Twitter. Cool girl. But anyway, hey, I want to jump right into this. And for the sake of time, I'm going to be very straight and to the point with today's show, particularly. And so I believe this is going to encourage you. I believe this is going to bless you. I believe, especially if you've been discouraged or condemned about a mistake you've made or mistakes that you are making, this is going to help you. So stay with me today, and it's going to help you. I want to read from something, Romans 5, verse 20. Here's what it says. I'm going to read from I'm going to sound so spiritual and so scholarly, the Aramaic version of the New Testament. Here it is, Romans chapter 5, verse 20. The Apostle Paul says, "But there was the introduction to the written law, that sin would increase." So this is a pretty wild statement in and of itself, because really, truthfully, what he just said is that the purpose of the laws given in the Old Testament was to expose sin. Man, what a lesson for pastors and leaders and teachers out there, that if you want to expose sin, preach the 10 Commandments. Truthfully. I keep saying truthfully. I'm trying to think of another word that I could use for that instead of truthfully. Honestly, we see here what the birthing place, you could say, the breeding ground for sin is really just a place where the law, the 10 Commandments, the laws given in the Old Testament have preeminence. They're the center. They're what's preached. They're what's demanded from people that they follow. But here, straight from the mouth of God, we have that the introduction to the law was given in order that sin would increase. So if you want sin to increase in your congregation, pastor, preacher, teacher, leader, if you want sin to increase, go ahead and preach the law. There you go. It sounds so confrontational, but it's the truth. And he goes on and he says, wherever, this is my main point today, wherever sin increased, wherever, in any area where sin increased, there grace superabounded. I encourage you to make this one of the pinnacles of your life, because this has become one of mine. This is something that has really been sort of a home base for me. This is something that I will always come back to. I will always lean on this, that wherever sin increases in my life, that is where grace superabounds. But I don't think we really understand the differences in strengths here, because we have on one level where sin increases. So where there's a lot of sin, where there's a lot of mistakes, there, grace, it doesn't just say increases. It doesn't just say that grace meets the level of your sin. It actually says there, wherever sin increased, grace superabounded. Not just more. Because for it to just abound, that would automatically mean it's a lot more than the increase of sin. It's already a lot more. But for it to superabound, this means it's a lot more. Let me just tell you something, that the grace of God will always swallow up your sin. That the grace of God will never be overpowered by your sin. That sin will never have the upper hand on the grace of God. Wherever sin increased, grace superabounds. Isn't that interesting? This is a radical statement. A radical statement, because really what he's saying is, where you can expect grace in your life is not in your strengths. It's not in the areas where you're walking perfectly in. It's not in the areas where you feel like you're completely holy. It's not in the area that you have completely put together. It's actually in the most broken, sinful, dirty area of your life that you can expect the grace of God to be operating in the most. Where you can expect superabounding grace for a miracle in your life is not in the area where everything is put together, but it's in the area that is very, very broken. It's the most broken areas of your life that get the most grace. Jamey, this gets a little bit interesting, because it sounds sort of what you're saying is, these people from Washington, D.C. keep calling me, and I think they keep trying to call me to sell me, like, to invest in like a Cheez-It company or something. I think that's what they told me. I'm so random. But anyway, no. Where sin increased, grace superabounds. It sounds almost unethical. Because, Jamey, it sounds like what you're saying is we are endorsing mistake making. It sounds almost as if you are endorsing sin. Absolutely not. I'm against sin just like God is against sin. But actually, Paul, if we look ahead a few verses, actually had people get confused over the same thing. He had actually people, let me just read it to you. Romans chapter 6, verse 1. Here's what it says. What shall we say, therefore? Shall we remain in sin that grace may abound? Scholars will tell you that what Paul is saying here is he's actually addressing a complaint being given about his preaching. People were actually saying, Paul, are you saying that we should continue sinning in order that grace would be attracted to us? Is that what you're saying? He says, God forbid. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying go out and sin all over the place so that grace would abound. That's not what I'm saying. But do you notice his wording? He says, what shall we say then? Should we continue in sin that grace may abound? Don't do it. Does he say that? Does he say it's not true? No. He says, God forbid that be what I'm saying. But it's still true that where sin increased, grace superabounds. In the area of your life where you are experiencing sin the most, I encourage you to look at that area and actually gain some encouragement today. Because it's in that area that you can expect superabounding grace. Superabounding. Not just grace to meet your sin. Not just grace to cover your sin, but grace to superabound sin. You always have good things coming. And I wonder if we learned where to really look for a miracle in our lives. Because too often, I've often thought that I can expect God's grace to work in the area that I have completely put together, that I'm extremely confident I have been walking in complete holiness in. It's in that area where I'll look for God to work. It's in that area where I will look for God to give me superabounding grace. But rarely Actually, never have I thought that God's grace would be attracted to the area of my weakness, my brokenness, my dirtiness, and my sin. But if you think about it, that's the only thing that makes sense. If grace is undeserved favor, it's only going to be attracted to the undeserving places in your life. Jamey, this sounds like you are endorsing sin. I'm not endorsing sin. I'm endorsing the goodness of Jesus. I'm not making much of your mistakes. It's not your mistakes that I'm glorifying. Really, what this does is this simply glorifies Jesus. Because it becomes nothing to do with us. It's everything to do with his goodness, folks. It's all about him. He's so gracious because of what he did at the cross. Now, it's the lowest places. It's the lowest places that get the flood. Think about it. Water will always flow to the lowest altitude, you could say. It will always flow to the lowest point. All the same, God's grace will do the same thing. It is attracted to the deepest, the darkest, the dirtiest, the most sinful area of your life. And I can tell you, look carefully. If you have an addiction to porn, you know what I would tell you? I believe that God's going to do something in your life where not only grace is going to meet that need and get you out of that addiction, but I believe this is going to be something that actually turns into, I believe what was your crutch is going to be turned into your pedestal to speak into people's lives. I believe it might even be part of your ministry. I'm one of the thousands of people you're going to be able to preach God's grace to because you saw how it operated in your area of weakness. If you have maybe a temper, I believe God's going to actually use. I believe that God's grace is going to transform you into the most cool-headed, calm, collected human being that's going to do wonders for your kids and your marriage. I believe that wherever sin increases, maybe you've got a temper, maybe you're impatient, maybe you've got an addiction, look at that area specifically and know that God is going to do something so much greater than that mistake did to you. Oh. You are going to, because of what Jesus did at the cross, you are going to gain, just like we talked about, you are going to gain much more than what you have lost through this because of Jesus. Is it because I'm endorsing mistakes? No, but I'm endorsing the goodness of Jesus. It's because he's good. It's not because we're right. It's not because we have good intentions. It's not because God just said, let them do what they want. No, there was a heavy price paid for this, and his name was Jesus, and he hung on a cross, and he had nails through his hands. He had a whip with bones and screws attached to it, ripped skin out of his body. All that he did it with love in his heart for you. He did it so that where sin increased, grace would superabound. Let me pray with you today. Father, I thank you that wherever sin increased, in our lives, your grace superabounds. I thank you, you transform those areas in our lives to minister to people, to help people. We're going to actually become gainers because of what Jesus did. Gainers in any area that we've lost. We thank you for it, Jesus. We receive it in Jesus' name. Amen. Hey, thank you so much for tuning in today. These people from Washington, D.C., I wonder if I'm in trouble. Do you think they're watching this and they're thinking, we need to get this guy off the internet? Maybe. I'm just not going to answer my phone. But thank you so much for tuning in today. Seriously, if you want to contact me, hit me up on my Twitter, jhammond3 with 3 I's, capital, Roman numeral 3, jhammond3, Twitter. Hit me up on Facebook. Email me at fifth with a 5, thdaily at gmail.com, or hit me up on Instagram. I'll check my messages on there too. But for real, hey, thank you so much for listening today. Share this with your friends. Share this on Facebook. We want the message of Jesus and his grace to get out to as many people as we can, and I can't do it by myself. So I appreciate your support. Seriously, thank you. I pray for you, and more to come. Good things coming. Expect big things. God's grace will always be bigger than your sin. So look for good things, even in those dirty, broken areas of your life. You can expect it. I'm James McBride Hammond III with Fifth on the Daily. God bless you and have a good day.